Sit down. All right. So this all starts with putting a framework for making decisions. And when we're thinking about decisions, we do get into that what I call the double-edged sword of choice. You know, it's your choice. You know, how often have we heard that? And how often have we no, really? And so when we're thinking about choice in regard to risk and decision making, is, as Michael said, that, you know, there's three types of risk that we look at. There's a risk of everyday life. There's the risk that we create. And then there really is truly that risk that puts people in danger. And when we're looking at this, and we look at this in choice, a framework and a structure to kind of think about choices, there's this three type of choice decision makings that maybe perhaps we as professionals or as those who are supporting others need to be thinking about. There's that level one type of choice, when people make choices that don't impact anybody but themselves. That impulse buying. Sometimes folks do.
Yeah.
And sometimes those choices may go a little bit further. So there's those level two type choices that we make, that the choice that we make has an impact, probably negative, on others or on an organization. In Janice's case, we're kind of at that level two choice. She's putting herself, although it's only for herself, it's having an impact on the agency, it's having an impact on those who are providing support to her, and it is putting her at risk. And then there's level three types of choices that people make that really needs more involvement, because those are the type of choices that people make that not only impact themselves, but it's a danger to themselves or others, and it impacts other systems. So maybe it's pulling in social services, maybe it's pulling in law enforcement, maybe it's pulling in other avenues that it's going to put you on the front page of the paper, which is pretty scary for anyone. And it's a type of risk that we really want to help people avoid if possible. All of those choices, however, come down to the fact that, do we know what's important to people? You know, as Janet said, do we know why she's not going to the day program? It's important to her not to go to the day program. Is it because someone's been eating onions all day? Please don't eat onions for lunch. And one of the things I find is, and I often talk about this with behavior, and as Leanne said, the decision making is 2 days. This stuff that I'm going to be talking about, kind of try to do in a half an hour, but it's really a 2-day training. So you get a snippet of it just to get exposed to a little bit. And when I often think that any one of us has a behavior or puts ourselves at risk when we don't have something that's important to us. And so we may make poor decisions that help us get that important to, but maybe not the best decision. So we really need to be thinking about how present are those important two things in our life. And when we're thinking about that presence, we need to be thinking about that sometimes we may have misinterpreted what people are doing. So this is a very easy way to start to look at what is important to somebody and how present is it in someone's life. And it's using something known as a high-low chart. How many people are familiar with high-low charts? A high-low chart? Okay, so we've got a number of people who say, yes, I know what that is. And very simply, it's just a way for us to figure out, we do highs and lows all the time. Kind of evaluate what's working, what's not working in somebody's life. And it may be different for all of us. You know, on the high-low, or the light-low change we saw this morning, that some people really liked the gallon of water yesterday, so it was a high for them. Some people, it may have been too much for them, so it was a low. Maybe it wasn't enough, so it was a low. So the presence really has an impact on what we need to be looking at. And it's different for each one of us. Now, I thought about doing this with a case study in a scenario, but one of the things we find is that the scenarios really are challenging because it puts us in a subjective situation. And we really need to make sure that we are able to focus on a specific situation to find out what's important to somebody. You really think about working, not working, we look at specific situations, so we can analyze it and pull out some important twos. It's really important for us that we get the perspective from the person. So doing a scenario for this tool, this skill, really isn't going to work. It's going to be too subjective. So we're actually going to make it a little bit more personal so you can experience it. Because I do think it's important to experience it. And we know that people's words and their actions really let us know what's important to people. We've gotten pretty skilled at that. And we also know that sometimes we need to pull in others who know and care about somebody to get a perspective, because sometimes we may not recognize it. Okay? So, what I want to think about is, I want you to think about, in your packets, you have a sheet in your registration packets that looks like this. It actually has the high-low sheet on it. And you want to do this for yourself, okay? I want you to think about what are 5 things that are really important to you at home. So some 5 things for me is it's important to me to spend time with my family. I travel a lot for work, so it's really important to me when I'm home to get to spend time with my family. It's really important to me to have good home-cooked meals, because I get very tired of eating in restaurants or going to the grocery store and bringing food back to my hotel. It's important to me to have good home-cooked meals. And notice the word good, which works really well because I like to cook. It's important to me to have some me time at home. And when we think about me time, people say, "We get me time all the time when you're in a hotel." That's not the same as me time at home. How many of you just like to have the house to yourself? And it's important to me to have a nice yard. I have this compulsion to keep up with the Joneses. And I have this compulsion not to have the city knocking at my door because my yard is getting overgrown. And it's also important to me to have a clean house. Okay? Those of you know me, I have a dog who believes that her fur should be all over the house. So our wood floors look like they've got fuzzy carpets. I like that way now. So identify those 5 things for yourself. Take a moment to identify those 5 things for yourself. So on your worksheet, you've got those lines. Share. Something that's important to you. Security. So what does security mean? Okay. So having a secure home, so people can't get in or out. Okay. So and we want to be specific about it, because what does that really mean? Security could mean something else to somebody else. So be as specific as possible. Share it.
My garden.
My garden. My garden is important to me. Okay?
Shared schedules.
Shared schedules. Your husband's working nights right now. Okay, it's not very shared.
Exercising every day.
Exercising every day. Bedroom at 65 degrees. We are not making judgments about anybody's important to you.
I'm kind of ADHD when it comes to my closet, so it has to be shortest to longest, shoes, heels in one, summer shoes in one, and like workout shoes in another. So organization.
They have medication for that.
They do. And my husband is very disorganized.
Your closet's bigger than your bedroom. Okay, we're not making judgments about it. Would you like to come and organize my closet? It's therapeutic.
I can't function in clutter.
You can't function in clutter. Okay. So we all have these things that are important to us. One of the things we really need to think about is how important are they to us? So I want you to think about at a scale of 1 to 4, 4 being this is super important to me. 1 being it's important, but I could get by if it's not there all the time. And I want you to rate those things. So for me, it is very important, and I rated a 4, that spending time with my family is super important. As I said, I travel a lot for work. So having family time is really important to me. It's also very important to me to have good home-cooked meals, so I rate that a 4. Getting to have some me time, that's important to me, but out of the range of things that I have at home, I rated a 2. Okay, so it's if I don't get it, it's not going to kill me, but man, I cherish it when I do get it. So it's a 2. And while I like to have a clean house, I really hate to clean the house. So it's a 1 for me. Okay, so take a moment and rate your 5 things. How important is it? On a scale of 1 to 4. I want you to look at each one and determine how important that item is to you. Is it super important? Is it very important? Is it somewhat important? Or it's important? That's one. Lori, what did you rate as a 1?
Time with my husband.
Time with your husband. No comment. Who else out of 1? Tammy.
It is really important for me to have a clean house. It is really important for me to have a clean house. And it's important for them to clean up after themselves, but I will get it for them.
Can you hear me now? Okay. It is very important for me to have a clean house. And I appreciate when people pick up after themselves, but it is a 1 to me if they don't. I mean, it's important to me that people pick up after themselves, but it doesn't irritate me, I guess. But because it is very high important to me to have a clean house. So I'll do it myself if I have to. So that's a 4.
So having others help out is important to you, but in the scheme of things, it's going to get done with it. Okay. And I could ask 4s, but there'd be a lot of 4s. Who had some 2s? A little bit more important. Pat, what's one of the...
I like that
Snack foods around the house.
Yeah.
People are sharing their secrets. That's why the mic's getting everywhere.
And it doesn't kill me if they aren't there, but I like to have a whole ice cream or whatever every evening.
All right. Good. So we're getting the idea. Megan?
Having fun and being entertained at home is really important to me. I'm at home by myself a lot since I got divorced, and so having things to entertain myself is really important, but it's still a 2.
Okay, great. So I really appreciate you prioritizing this. It helps a lot. Now what I really want to think about is how present are these important 2s in your life? And again, on a scale of 1 to 4, 1 where it is 4 where it's just where you want it to be, it's present, you're getting a lot of it. 1, it's not where you want it to be, you're not getting a lot of it. So for me, spending time with my family, I rated a 3. I still travel a lot. There was a point in time where it was a 1 because I was working a lot, and then when I was home, my mother-in-law was going through a lot of health problems, so even if I was home, I was able to spend time with family. Home-cooked meals, I cook. We all cook well at home, so we're always getting good home-cooked meals. Getting some me time at home. Those times where you can watch TV when no one's talking to you. 10 minutes. Have a nice yard. Doesn't really happen because I don't get to do it. And I like doing that. And having a clean house, it's clean enough for me. It's pretty present. Okay, so rate that for yourself. Having family time is important to me, and it's present at a 3. So you're going to figure out the important 2 and the present and put the X or the dot. Okay? 4. Okay, sorry about this. This originally was animated. It's not animated right now, so it's going to make it a little bit easier. It's important to me to have good home-cooked meals. It's happening all the time. Okay, it's important to me to have a nice yard. It's not very important to me. Okay, so you get the idea. Take a moment to do that. The present, but it may not really increase the value to it. Okay? And all of this is explained on the back of your worksheet. If you are low importance and low presence, you're probably dissatisfied. And if it is really important to you and it's not present, you're going to get angry. That's a low low. Or that's a high low, excuse me. And if we think about this in relation to the toxic to healing environment, that angry area is pretty toxic. So we're probably going to be doing things that others may not like too much. And people may try to fix you or divorce you. If it is important to us and at a point where it's not happening as much, we can be disappointed. We're probably at that tolerating point where we just kind of accept it, you know, like status quo, and just kind of go through life and, okay, another day beside my home, you know? Or we can be satisfied and happy. This is really where the growth is happening, where things can really start to happen. Let's think about this from the standpoint of, do we really know what's important to people? Let me tell you about Carl. Carl is someone who, it was important to him, and someone that I supported, and it was important to him to be his own man, have his own apartment. And, you know, we often want that for people. We say independence is the thing that we want for folks. And I think independence is not quite accurate. While we espouse independence, I really don't know anybody who's truly independent. I know people who are interdependent, some people who are codependent, but really nobody who's truly independent. What I do know is that people want autonomy. They want control of their lives, control to make decisions. And in Carl's life, having his own apartment was important to him, so we got him his own apartment. And he kept having friends staying at his apartment, sometimes 9 at a time. In fact, the first, and they weren't very much into housekeeping. In fact, the first 5 years I supported Carl, he lived in 12 different apartments because the landlord didn't like the fact that there was only one person on the lease, and whenever we showed up, there was a lot of people there. And we worked really hard, but we missed the boat because what was even more important to him was not being alone. And when we shoot for the independence thing, and we don't really listen to people, and his behavior was clearly telling us, his actions were clearly telling us, I don't like being by myself. And so I'm going to find people who want to live with me, whether they're the most, whether they're really good friends or not. I don't have to be alone. If we had done something like this, and we had asked the right questions, you know, why is probably the best question we can ask. Be the perpetual 5-year-old, why? We'll get to the answer to really figure things out, to really move things forward. A very easy way to start to identify things, and a way that helps us get beyond our perceptions. We really need to be talking to folks to figure this stuff out. And I know we don't have much time, we have a couple minutes, but at your table, I want you to think about the fact that we can assist the person in identifying ways to increase happiness. We can start to develop goals and outcomes that make sense for people. And we can really start to have the conversations about what do we need to have in place to create that supportive environment for folks that's really going to make things work well. So you've got a couple minutes. I really want you to think about how could you use this when you return to work? How could this be helpful at work? Give you a couple minutes. Have a table discussion. How could you use this when you return back to your non-gathering life?
welcome to be a part of some follow-up and problem solving, and it seems that this matrix could be an excellent tool for us to sort of talk with and evaluate the importance of using the presence, and then use it as sort of a action planning or informing planning moving forward. And I'd be really curious to know, Lori, how do you think sunrise?
All right, thank you. Who else? Maybe two more before we take a break. Anybody else?
One thing that stands out to me is one of the things that I often find in the person-centered describing process is I'll have these things that bubble up as important too, but then they won't show up on good day or bad day. And so this seems a little more sophisticated in helping us sort priorities. And so I think it'll be really helpful for me from that standpoint.
How about one more? And the sooner you share, the sooner we can go to break.
Amanda George comments online, says, action planning, similar to working, not working, but with focus on priority as to where we need to focus.
All right, great. Thank you all. I hope this was helpful. 15 minutes.